So welcome to today's episode of Coffee with Chris. On with me, I have Dustin Matthews, the founder of SpeakingEmpire. And he is a marketing guru. He just kind of told me that. But we want to find out what it is that you do here. Dustin, give us a background on yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So I run a company called SpeakingEmpire. And, as you said, really my passion is marketing. And so we really probably should start with the whole speaking thing. So what's funny and unique and probably would serve a lot of folks that listening in is when I got started, I went to Florida State. I'm here in Florida and had to take public speaking. Did you have to take public speaking any time in your journey?
I took classes that had presentations. And I think we had one on public speaking, which was more of an impromptu type of a class, almost like acting.
That's awesome. Like that's fun and exciting for me now. But if you would have told me I had to do that, maybe 15 years ago now, I would have flipped. So I had to take this class. And so the funny thing is I became so motivated to not take the class that I found a loophole in the student handbook. And so basically, if I had gotten a teacher to write a note for me because I participated in this class, which by the way, I was chasing a girl, so it didn't work with the girl, but it served me in that moment. So I was able to get out of public speaking because I was so afraid of it. And so it's funny because now I run a company called SpeakingEmpire, and the reason why I do it and share how to basically speak to get business for any sort of business owner or thought leader is because once I did it and I saw the profound effect it had, like people came up to me, the benefit of getting clients from it, it completely changed my life. I said, wow, I was running from this for so long. I just want to share, like it's so powerful and it's not as painful as I thought it was going to be. And so that's kind of my emotional story of SpeakingEmpire, running from that fear of speaking to now embracing it because there's so many awesome benefits to it.
Because we need it for our life. I have a similar background where I wasn't avoiding speaking, but I was an engineer. And we went in the back room and we did work. And, it got to the point where all of us do that. So we're all in the background doing work. So who represents that industry? So what did you start out, if you weren't always speaking, what back then was your thought that your life would be?
Well, Chris, we're going to hit it off because when I was at school, I was studying computer science. Now, the thing about computer science, if you went the route that I did, was you had to take like physics and like really hard like math classes. And I don't know, maybe my frame of mind wasn't right in college. And so I said, man, this is just too hard. And so I found in the School of Library Science, the same school that a librarian goes to get their degree, there was this little backdoor track. I guess you can say I'm finding the loopholes or the other ways, the other paths. And so I said, I'm going to do this because there was a track in networking. And so I'm like, oh, wireless networking. This is going to be the wave of the future. And I said, that's fun. That's exciting. Internet through the airwaves. And so I graduated with that degree. And so I have basically a somewhat technical background. And so when I left school, I didn't have anything lined up, and getting a job wasn't easy. And so I read a book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and that got me really excited about real estate. I would find out that real estate wasn't my passion, it was marketing, because I basically went to go work for free for a real estate company, and I discovered the power of marketing and speaking through that.
Oh, yeah? So how did that progress? What was the first time, you said you had a fear of speaking.
Yeah.
What was the first time you went up there and were in front of people, and how did that make you feel?
I've got a great story on this one. This is a good one. We didn't script or prompt this, so.
We'll be right back with the rest of today's show right after these brief messages from our sponsors. Cyber Resilience Institute helps build strong cyber communities designed to prevent members from attack. Like building a neighborhood watch, it takes coordination and a sharing community to protect our identities and valuables in the virtual world. Typically, we hear that organizations know they need to do something to protect their cyber assets, but don't know where to begin. Let Cyber Resilience Institute help your community create an action plan. Cyber Resilience Institute will build your community or business marketplace so that it is designed to support a collective cyber defense. Contact them for more information at cyberresilienceinstitute.org.
I've got a great story on this one. This is a good one. We didn't script or prompt this. So I basically go work for free for Dave, who's my partner in Speaking Empire now, and Debbie as well. So in that venture, I was working for them. And so I was there doing anything I could because I thought real estate was the thing I wanted to do. And, I never took a business class. I never took marketing at FSU. And so I was basically an assistant. And so what happened is Dave was doing a presentation that night, but he also had to close on his condo. So I get the phone call. And he says, hey, look, you're going to have to do the presentation. Now, this was like 1 year out of me getting out of having to speak, like that story I shared in the beginning. And he's like, you got to do it. I'm like, I got to do it. I don't know anything about foreclosure. I don't know anything about real estate investing. I mean, I'm just hanging around you trying to absorb what I can. And he's like, you got to do it. No one else can do it. I'm like, oh, my gosh. So I remember going home and getting in the shower and letting the hot water run over me. And I didn't know at the time, but I was visualizing, I was meditating essentially, and I was trying to like just put myself in a good frame of mind. And so I get out of the shower and I'm like getting myself mentally prepared to go do this. And the phone rings and it's Dave. And so Dave's like, hey, I got some good news for you. You don't have to do it. We're not closing today. We couldn't get the whatever, right? And so I'm like, oh, it's a big sigh of relief. And I'm like, oh, thank goodness. Like my stress level went down like this. So then like I'm getting ready, I'm going back to work to, get back into mode, and the phone rings. Now I look at the phone and it's Dave. And, it's like that moment in life you're like, like, that your life is going to change. If I take this call, I'm going to have to do something I probably don't want to do. Dave's like, listen, I got to close. You're back on. And so out of necessity, like I couldn't run. There was no loophole. There was no like call a friend, phone a friend, and I had to do it. And so I went up there, and I just remember I psyched myself up a lot. And I think a lot of people do. They have that fear, and it's the fear of the unknown. And so I went up there, I deliver my presentation, and if people think I have the baby face now, imagine me like 10, 15 years ago. I really had it. And so I'm like, no one's going to take me seriously. There's people, 3 times my age in here. They're not going to listen to me. And I was pleasantly surprised when I got off stage. People were coming up to me and they're like, well, what about this? And what about this? And I'm like, wow, this really works. And so in that moment I said, all right, it was just my belief. It was my mindset that like no one would pay attention, or I'm going to screw up and do something bad. And so that's my passion that I bring to Speaking Empire, to share with others, no matter what business or industry they're in.
Yeah. So how long was that presentation? Was it something short? Was it something you knew like the back of your hand?
It was like 35, 45 minutes, and really it was like a product demo. So I knew it. I just, like when you have a fear in life, I've found, and talking with others, you think of all these weird scenarios, like, well, what if someone stands up and starts yelling at me? Or what if they ask me this really weird foreclosure law? What if there's a lawyer in there and he like grinds me about, oh, well, that's not right. And it's funny because I think it's instinctual. It's that like, how do you say, like when we were like, throwing spears at woolly mammoth and stuff like that. It was like that protection.
That fight or flight instinct you have, right? Either you do it or you die, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so it's trying to protect us, but it makes it like crazy scenarios. And so it was a 45-minute presentation. I did a demonstration. People loved it. The response was great, and that was it.
I think if I go back to looking at my earlier, I don't think I was ever like afraid of speaking, but I thought I wasn't going to be good enough, and that I had to have everything prepared.
Yeah.
As an engineer person, we go into detail and we start putting everything together. And, I'm sure everything I had in all the possible scenarios, got to have the lead in right. Let me write down a joke or something that I know, and it never comes out flowing when you're doing that. And
sure.
So I would say that my earlier takes weren't taken as well because I was trying to script it too much.
Yeah, I mean, there's a balance. Chris, you're absolutely right. There's a balance of scripting and hitting the points, but you can't be a robot, and you've got to be you. And I think that's the biggest mistake I see people make is they try to emulate somebody, which is good, model success. However, they're just trying to be that because they don't know themselves, or they don't know how to deliver it in their own tone. And you're right. And so if you are trying to be someone you're not, you're going to be in trouble. And the only thing I want to kind of inject in here is if your intent is to sell something, is to raise money for your charity, is to set up appointments, to do business, if that is your intent, you ought to really script it. And if you think about it, people that do a lot of direct mail pieces, or people that, what's another good example, that do newspaper, there is a formula, there is a format. And as you know, as an engineer, if you send enough, you do enough testing and enough iterations, you're going to get 20% response. And so it works that way. And so if you want to get that, you ought to script it, but it's got to be your words.
Okay. So this is really interesting because we didn't talk before. So I wasn't, other than the Speaking Empire, looked at the website and everything. I knew where we were going to go as far as talking. But so if you are now talking about speaking, where does that fit in? I know our virtual world is changing a lot. And I've taken a lot of the approach where I started putting out podcasts just to get some marketing things. So I have some things on my website that people can look at and say, here's the products. And then they kind of get a mind of their own and get into this, wow, this is the new era. Tell us how speaking and what you're doing fits in with the web and the modern era of social media.
I would say this is a great question. I would say it's an explosion. And what I mean by that, if you take a look at the tech out right now, and as soon as we mention names, people will be able to date in the future. But if you take a look at Snapchat being so big for a certain market demographic, if you take a look at Facebook Live, they're giving high value to videos and live videos. And so I know I said videos, but if you think about it, when you're in front of the camera, you are speaking, you are performing. And so it's only going to get more. And I probably should frame that a different way. Like, we're only going to be speaking more. And now you may not be speaking in front of a stage or doing a webinar, but the camera's always rolling. And there's a lot of effort and a lot of emphasis to video on a lot of different platforms. You look at Instagram, they sort of modeled Snapchat, and they've got their own Instagram live short videos, Twitter and Periscope. These are all speaking platforms to me because you have to deliver a message in a short amount of time, and you want to get people to take an action, hopefully, whether it's to buy something or it's to take an idea and actually go implement it and change their life. So it's only going to be more in force.
Yeah. So at what time does it become too much? There's too many videos out there. Everybody's behind a camera. It becomes white noise.
Chris, this is spot on. So, and the reason why is, like, I think about, like, my grandfather, like, having this conversation in his time. And so, every generation, I suspect, believes the same thing, is like, there's no more bandwidth, there's no more time, there's too many newspapers, there's too many magazines, right? There's too many, like, cold calling, that sort of thing. And so I think this conversation will be evergreen. We're always going to wonder, and we may have a valid point, like, there's so many platforms, there's more things competing for our attention than ever before, because before it was like phone and newspaper and direct mail, print stuff. Well, now we've got that, but we've got Snapchat and all this other stuff, and VR's coming out. So here's the reality. If you're interested in a topic, you can't consume too much information. There can't be too many options. And what I mean by this is, let's take a real classic example. When you bought your first car, if you can put yourself in that moment, right? Like, you're excited, maybe you're younger, and you're like, I get my permit and I'm driving and I'm going to get my first car, right? And so think about, like, all the research that you did. You started asking your friends. If you went to magazines or the Auto Trader, or you went online to do it. Like, when you become interested, when you say, yes, I'm interested in sports, I'm interested in buying a car, you consume a lot of information. You might not realize it, but the consumption of information is there, and people want that. And so, yes, there's a lot of options, and the mindset is, don't try to speak to everybody, but just speak to that person, serve that need in that moment, and you will find who you're looking for.
Okay, so now you're setting up, you want to put something out, you want to be a speaker, you want to be on social media platforms. How much commitment do you need? How much information you need out there to be viewed as someone that people turn to?
Well, that's a good question. I don't know that I've had that. So, I mean, the answer can be almost nothing. And that may sound contrarian, and that's, in a way, I'm trying to jolt anyone that watches this into to realize that. And so a lot of people think you need, like, the book. You see the books behind here and plaques and stuff like that. And the answer is, yes, it's helpful. Yes, it will serve you. Yes, if you're a speaker and you have a book, that's good because that's your business card. However, the reality is this: people have challenges in life, whether it's to lose weight, it's to make money, to get a new career, to buy the car. And so they have a challenge. All of us have challenges in life, or we have things that we're trying to figure out. And so if you can be seen, meaning that whether you speak, whether you do videos, if you can be seen as the expert and have value, really, if you can provide that person value, like, I've bought a car, I owned a car dealership, here's the 7 things that you need to look for. You don't have to have a book. You don't have to be on TV. Now, does it help to have all those things? Absolutely. But the biggest thing, Chris, I want to share is like a lot of people, they use it as an excuse. Like they're like, hey, I don't have a book, so I can't go out and speak. And that's just not the truth. And so you don't need a lot to get started. You just need your expertise and your mindset to go out there and a willingness to share your message.
Okay. So it's not as much as you have done, but the passion you bring to it, the topic has to be on with somebody, what the need is. How do you, if I say, I'm interested in my whole life has been digging graves.
Yeah.
And I'm interested in going out and speaking about all the nuances that happen in graveyards, digging graves. Is there anybody that cares?
Yes. The answer is yeah, absolutely. And I know that's crazy. Like you would think, I think that too, the famous thing is underwater basket weaving, right? Like is anyone like, that's like the joke, right? So the first place I would go to look with that data, because I don't know that marketplace, but what I would do is I would go to Google and type that in the word association. Right? And so oftentimes, especially in the B2B world, there is an association, there is a magazine in some cases where people that are interested in a particular topic are aggregating. It's our job as smart business owners, as executives, as entrepreneurs, whatever category you fall into, to go and do your research first to figure out where is your marketplace or the people that are interested in your topic, where are they already hanging out? And the odds are they're already collecting themselves somewhere. Now, it may be hard to find because there may be this old newsletter that's only print and they don't even have a website, but they're getting that newsletter somehow, or they're in this newspaper, or they have a Facebook group. It's our job to go find it. And so the reality is you've got to do your research and then figure out a way to influence. And Chris, I just wanted to add this one thing because it popped in my head. I think it's valuable. You don't even have to be, because you mentioned it as well, you don't have to be perfect or even the best expert. And the classic example of this, if you look at Dr. Phil on TV, if you look at maybe even Rachel Ray, are these, or Dr. Oz as well would be another great example. Now, the question I have, if we went and asked all these doctors and chefs, are these the best people that you've ever seen? The answer is probably not. Meaning, like, is Dr. Phil smarter than the local person in your backyard? Maybe not. Maybe he is just as smart, but he's perceived as being the expert because he's on TV. And so, again, you don't have to be, the end-all, be-all expert. However, you just have to be as a position correctly or bring the value.
So you have to have the passion to stay with it. I mean, this is one of the things I've seen where people are like, I'm going to be an expert. I'm going to get branded. Help me put together. I've had some coaching calls like this, put together to get myself out there. And then 2 months later, they're like, well, I don't want to do that. I want to do something else.
Well, I think that's part, you're right. I mean, it's part of the journey. You do have to find your passion. And I know for some people, I work with people from all different walks of life. And so sometimes they're on that journey of figuring out what really is their passion. And they're not as clear because they haven't done that they think they'd like to do coaching with people one-on-one. But then they figure out, I want my time and I don't want to have to deal with certain conversations. And so that it's along their path. But the answer is, yeah, I mean, if you're doing something just to make money, if you're doing something because you think it would look good on your resume, this is generally not good because you will burn yourself out, or you will have to put that tough day in and then you're questioning, do I want to put that tough day in? So passion for sure trumps it, but I do want to caveat that and say that sometimes people don't know their passion yet because they haven't tried enough things.
Yeah, so you just have to get out there and start.
Yeah, I mean, that was back to where we started with this, is like that fear prevented me from doing the speaking. And it may not be speaking for you. It may be do a webinar, do a Facebook Live. What if I look stupid? Well, if you never do it, you never can get to what's on the other side, clients, whatever, a bigger business, the ultimate goal that you want to achieve. So
we'll be right back with the rest of today's show right after these brief messages from our sponsors. Cyber Resilience Institute helps build strong cyber communities designed to prevent members from attack. Like building a neighborhood watch, it takes coordination and a sharing community to protect our identities and valuables in the virtual world. Typically, we hear that organizations know they need to do something to protect their cyber assets, but don't know where to begin. Let Cyber Resilience Institute help your community create an action plan. Cyber Resilience Institute will build your community or business marketplace so that it is designed to support a collective cyber defense. Contact them for more information at cyberresilienceinstitute.org.
So now, speaking Empire, you talked about the ultimate goal you want to achieve. What is yours? What do you do? What do you help with? What are you trying to achieve?
Thanks, absolutely. So my goal is really to inspire folks at Speaking Empire, here at Speaking Empire, and everything I do in my life is to find that message that's already inside. It's like my belief that people have a message, and whether you're a stay-at-home mom, you have a message of the values you want to instill into your kids. You know, if you're a business owner, you probably have a message of a product and service. If you're a charity, I'm sure you've got a movement that you want to create. And so my belief is everyone has a message inside. It's just finding it that's challenging for some people. And then if you do know that you have that message, is how do you polish it and position it in a way that gets people excited, right?
Okay.
That they want to tune in for more, they want to do business with you or donate to your charity. And so that's the cause work that we do at Speaking Empire, is really inspiring people to find that message, polish it, and then really amplify it with all the cool tools that we have, the Snapchats, the Skypes of the world, webinars, speak from stage. And really that's our purpose and mission. And so what's really cool back behind here, Chris, is this represents, and I'll do a little zoom in, some of the clients that we've worked with. And up on that shelf right here, that's our international wall. And so I'm really excited because there's a big explosion overseas for some of the strategies that we're using in the U.S. And so we work with folks in health, in fitness, in tech, in franchising. And so basically, we just want to help people spread their message and help them communicate the value they have to the world.
And then make a business out of it.
Absolutely. Now, everyone doesn't make a business out of it. If you want to create sustainability, if you want to go bigger, if you really want to change people's lives, then there is a business. Like even if you look at a church, and people sometimes don't understand this, but a church essentially is a business, but it has a great cause behind it. And so what we like to say is if you have a message very similar to a church, or if you have a message of business or a product or service, then you should really treat it like a business so that it can sustain itself and create legacy. Some people just choose to do it as a passion. Like they go into, a hospital and they just want to motivate people because, those people are in a challenging spot. And so they do it out of philanthropy. But you're right. Most people choose the business route to create that sustainability.
Okay. So now let's do the value add. Let's help people out there that just want to get some of your advice. Know what things you give them to get out there and syndicate it, to make it bigger, to get on all these different platforms. What advice do you give that helps people out?
Yeah, I mean, big time for sure. So number one is pressing the flesh. I mean, this is more of a easy answer, and then I'll get to the cool examples. So at the end of the day, despite the technology we have, the Skypes of the world, the next new tech that's going to come out, the periscopes, all that stuff, at the end of the day, this is a people business. And so getting out and meeting face-to-face or even virtually is by far the best way to make something happen. Picking up the phone and talking to people, like not hiding behind typing, but actually communicating and making solid connections. And so that's my big advice. And a lot of people are like, oh, let's automate it. Well, okay, we can automate it, but let's get out there and let's start talking to people. Let's start figuring out how to build value. Now, the second thing I like to do to kind of get through the gatekeeper, like for like Chris and I's story, like it was pretty easy to connect through LinkedIn. It's not always so easy to like send a message and put something together. So I'm a big fan. I don't have a sample here, but I'm a big fan of direct mail. And so I know it's old school, but if you want to get a deal done, if you want to speak on a certain stage, I'm a big fan of sending something FedEx, something that's 3D, not just like a sheet of paper, but like 3D, something memorable, like a shoe in the mail with a cute note that says, I'm just trying to get my foot in the door. I'm a fan of the old school because the old school is tried and true. It's experiential. People can touch it, and it's more profound. And so being a marketing guy, that's easy for me to say, and this is what I do. And so those are my big tips for getting out there and making it happen.
So marketing now, we'll shift a little bit.
Yeah.
Because you talked about marketing.
All right.
Do you market yourself as a product? Do you help people market their products in mass? What is your kind of area of focus there?
Yeah, absolutely. So really, when we work with folks in the marketplace, what's interesting, Chris, is like we draw people in with the message of speaking, and so we help people communicate their message better. However, what we find is most people have a marketing challenge, and so what's unique and different is, and should apply to a lot of people, is sometimes you may be an IT person or you may solve this challenge, but it's super competitive. So what's something else that you can put that's valuable in the marketplace that may be easier to get people's attention, and then once you do business with them and you build a relationship, you can say, well, we also do this. And so at Speaking Empire, we lead with speaking because there's not a lot of people in that space. And then we build a relationship, and they're like, oh, well, I need marketing too. And so that's really where I come in. And so I show people how to amplify their message. And really, I have a 3-part process, and I'll just share real quick. One is, if you imagine a triangle, the first leg of the triangle is PR. So PR, using press releases, doing community events, going to industry organized trade shows, is classic. People have been doing this forever, but that's not the only piece, right? Mm-hmm. The other piece is branding. So building a name for yourself, building a name for your company, having a professional image that resonates with your marketplace. And then my personal favorite out of the triangle, which is the foundational part, is direct response. And so I'm not a guy from Nike or Pepsi-Cola that has a $100 million advertising budget. And I understand that when I put money out as a small business owner, as an entrepreneur, I want to get it back as quickly as possible. And so direct response is that. We put a message out there with a call to action, and when we invest $1, we hope to get $2. Now, when you combine all 3 of those together, you have what I call like the perfect trifecta, which is you have direct response, PR, and then you have branding. And really that's what I show people how to do, is like, how do you put that all together so that you can get short-term wins, but also build equity and build a brand for your business or for you personally.
Over time.
Over time, yeah.
Okay. So
yeah.
your advice, and this is kind of thinking my own needs right now.
Let's make it real. Yeah.
How do you start then targeting speaking engagements? Give us an example of how you would say, here's somebody I just met that's, like myself, I have a big online presence, but I don't do much in-person speaking. So I am actually looking, and that's one of the things I'm starting to really build out. What advice would you give me in that area?
Perfect. I go back to direct response because that's like my bread and butter. That's how I grew up in this world. And so by direct response, you got to have a list. So number one, let's just be real, Chris. So for you, are there industry conferences that you would like to speak at that you know about?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, great. So we start with the list. So when I first started my first newsletter, when I left working for Dave and Debbie and went off on my own and did my own thing, now we're partners together in Speaking Empire, I created a list of all the influencers, and I did it the old-fashioned way. I sent them a newsletter in the mail every month so I could build a name. Now, I'm not saying you do that, Chris, but I'm saying let's target all top 100. If we can make 50 to 100 of the events that you want to speak at, and go big. Maybe it's the biggest, largest tech, conference out there, all the way down to the one with, 50 people, right? And so then now we need to figure out, okay, we've got a list, we have a marketplace of where you want to show up and would be good. Now, what do we need to do to influence? And so there's a couple ways to think about this. You've already got some assets, such as an online presence. So if you've got Twitter followers or Facebook friends or a LinkedIn follower, can we ask the community that you've built value for to reach out to these conferences or these organizers of the conference and say, you've got to have Chris on your stage. You really got to have him. And so when you show up and you bring the army, whether that's online, then it grabs people's attention. And so it immediately puts you on the map. But let's say they're not you, Chris. Let's say they don't have a following. They're starting from scratch. I would do it the old-fashioned way, create that list, and then I would be sending packages in the mail, priority mail and FedEx. I know that's going to cost some money, but how are you going to break through the clutter, And so what you put out there, what you invest in the relationship, you get back. And so I would advise, I should say, put together your speaker package, a book if you've got it, a talk in a FedEx package and mail it to the organizer and follow up with a phone call. And so really this is classic, like, let's create a list, let's create a marketing plan, and let's create a message to go after. And that's what I would advise people to do. Now there's so many more tactical things that we could do. We could Facebook them all and target them on LinkedIn and have your ad show up there. but I know for some people that's a lot. And so the old school, tried and true, easiest is leverage your assets. So you may have a community online, push them to the promoter and say, have Chris speak, or, and it really shouldn't be or, it should be and send a package in the mail.
Interesting. I thought that you were going to start talking about all kinds of online things.
Yeah, it's funny.
Why is it your perception that the old school, the hitting the pavement comes out above all these new social media things that everybody else will talk about doing?
Because it's different. I guess to be quite frank with you, I grew up old school, and I know I look young, but I guess I got brought up with, I like as a copywriter, one that writes words to get a response. I was studying newspapers from like the 1800s. I was studying sales letters from 1950, and I would write them out by hand. And so my education probably dictates it more than anything, but it's my belief that it's experiential. So yes, this is experiential, but it's not tactile. We're not touching. And so when you send a package in the mail, if you get an Amazon package, I don't know if you still get excited. I still get excited when stuff comes in the mail like that. When I get a birthday card, which almost happens never nowadays, a birthday card, it's different. It's a different approach. Plus, that stuff lays around in the office. So the physical, like digital, like you shut your computer down, we shut this, it all disappears, right? I know we got phones and it's on our phone, but this lays in the office on a desk. Oh, I got to call that guy. Or I got to follow up with that person. And so it's my belief that when you create an experience like Apple does, when you get the MacBook, if you like MacBooks, or the HP, and you get it in the package and you unwrap it and you get the sticker out of there, I mean, it's experiential. And I believe that leaves that lasting touch for a lot of people. And last thing I'll say here, I know I'm talking a lot, is a lot of our demographic is older still. So it's not like we're, the guy that's making the decision or the gal that's making the decision about who to have at their tech conference, they didn't grow up with Snapchat. What did they grow up with? Books, physical, they're generally a little bit older. And so until that, that's part of the society goes away, old school is still tried and true as much as a lot of the tech tries to knock it.
Okay. So one thing that immediately comes up when I thought about what your approach here in talking.
Yeah.
How much money do you spend per lead, and what's your thoughts about money spent for people into my product funnel, people who will be customers?
Yeah.
What's your guidelines for people on that?
So it's different. So the answer is it's different, and I'm going to go deep on this one because this is a really good question, Chris. So it depends on the channel. So this is more of a higher level conversation. So here's a real quick example. So for us at Speaking Empire, we will pay to play at a certain conference. So this is a strategy for anyone that wants to speak. If you get the no 17 times, you can always write a check. Most time, always write a check to speak at the conference as a sponsor, a high level sponsor. And so if they don't have that as an option, always ask. Right. Mm-hmm. So when we go to a conference and we know people have paid $500 or $1,000 or $2,000 to be there, we will pay sometimes up to $30,000 to sponsor. Now, I know that's a lot, but it's because we understand our metrics, right? And so we know that because someone gets on a plane, because they made an investment of $2,000, that's a higher quality conversation. It's a higher quality lead. Mm-hmm. And so for us, we'll invest more to get that customer. So we'll invest up to $2,000 in that scenario to get a customer, because someone that comes and works with us at Speaking Empire, they're going to get speaking, they're going to get marketing, they may join our mastermind and go, down the funnel and down our path. Now, I can't spend that sort of thing to try to get someone to buy a book online, $2,000 to get someone to buy my $5 book, because I'll be massively upside down. Mm-hmm. And so depending on the channel, we'll do it. So the quick answer for me online is generally to get a buyer for me, and a front-end buyer, basically someone that makes the purchases of a book or something small digital product, generally I'm going to spend about $20 to get that person to make a purchase for me in the $10 to $20 range. Mm-hmm. And so, again, $10 to $20 versus $2,000 because of the channel, because of what I'm selling. And so how does that help our listeners and people that will be hearing this? Well, you have to know your numbers. And you have to know what you're selling. So if you're selling big, higher ticket programs, you should come out of pocket more, because what you put out there, what you invest in the relationship, you get back if you've got your stuff dialed in. When you're just starting off with the relationship, kind of like when you're dating, like you don't you don't make marriage proposals on the first date. You go to a dinner, right? Then it goes from there, and it transgresses. So it's that same thing as well. So when you're first getting started, the biggest thing I say is you've got to use your time. Mm-hmm. A lot of people don't have a budget, right? So it's like, well, Dustin, how do I know what my numbers are? Great, I understand. Get out there. Let's start getting you on the phone, because that doesn't cost you anything. It is your time, but it's not like, $30,000 check. Let's call some promoters. Let's put some direct mail pieces out there, and let's start building momentum. And then you get savvier as you go.
Okay, so let's set some expectations here.
Okay. Yep.
You talk $30,000. You talking on the phone. What is a realistic timeline and amount of effort that somebody puts in between those 2 points?
Interesting question. Good with the questions. So you're asking the question of like, so if I'm investing $10 right now to get a buyer, or $20, and then I want to play the 30, like how long did it take us to go from here to there?
I'm talking about somebody that listens to this for the first time and says, I want to be that in my future. Yeah. How much time am I looking at? Is it 5 years of my life before I get to the point where I can write the $30,000 checks? And is it 80 hours for the first 2 years? I'm just want to give people some realistic expectations, because that's the part that stops so many people, is being unrealistic about what it takes to get to the levels you're talking about. Yeah,
you're right. I mean, I don't think I have a clear-cut answer. I'm trying to give you so let me give you the vanilla answer, and then we'll try to go. We'll definitely go deeper. So the vanilla answer is it all depends on what you're selling. So if you're in the corporate and you're selling $250,000,
part of what you're doing is determining what you're selling as part of this process.
Yeah, thanks for breaking. You're right. So you're right. So if you're selling $250,000 contracts in corporate, to spend $30,000 may not be a big issue for you. And so to dive down further, like, the answer is when you don't have money buys speed is what I want to communicate. So if you're not in a point to invest money in advertising, then you got to do it the old-fashioned way, which is you got to pick up the phone and you have to hustle. You have to put labor in. And I know it's not a favorite answer for what people want to hear, but it's the real answer. And so what I mean is, like, you've got to pick up the phone. You've got to hustle. You've got to be creative. And it may take you a lot more time to do that because you're hearing no 17 times a day until somebody says yes. Well, eventually over time, once you have the war chest built up, you don't have to do the sort of grunt work, or you can hire someone to do that grunt work. You can now invest the $30K. So let's give a clear-cut answer. If someone's just getting started, they've had some level of success in business, I would say it's going to take a good year. Now, as soon as I say that, people are like, oh, I don't have time for a year. And so I want to be real and give you a real answer. Like, to really hit some critical mass, usually about a year, 2 years, year and a half in, you start to critical mass. But what a lot of people don't do is take inventory, or they're not willing to call in favor. So let's say you've been in corporate America forever and you've transitioned. I'm sure you have some relationships that you could call on. Are you willing to call on them? Are you willing to hear no? Are you willing to make yourself look like an idiot for the ask? And so a lot of people don't. And I was in that situation too. Like, I was afraid to do that. And so the thing is like, the more you get to know, eventually you're going to get a yes, and you're going to figure out along the way. And so a lot of times people hear no and then they stop for a week. Mm-hmm. Well, let's not stop. Let's get another no the next hour and keep going till we get it. And so I don't want to discourage people because I threw out a year or 2 years. It can happen quickly. I mean, like, you can get on the phone.
Persistent.
What's that?
You got to be persistent. Take the time and be committed to it. Sounds like the final thing we're coming down to here.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I mean, I don't want people to get jaded and think, oh, it's going to take me a year here. And the reality is, yes, to get critical mass, to live on the beach and from your laptop, it's going to take you some time to do that. But it can happen quickly if you think about it. If you've got capital, relationship capital, like people that you are out there with, friends, you've got to figure out how to leverage them. And that's how you're going to buy your speed. And so you could be on a stage like in 24 hours if you get an introduction from somebody, if you call in those favors. And so it can happen quicker. It's just, I want to be real too.
I had, and I'll ask one more thing before we close,
sure.
But this is an example of one of my good friends gave me that really became an overnight success. Right?
Okay.
He said, yeah, it took me 15 years to become an overnight success. So and sometimes that comes, and literally, but it's the persistence. And this person had so much persistence in what he was doing that he kept going out and talking at free places to kids,
Yep.
to different local community things, and then all of a sudden it just took off. But so many people out here at that level that are in that, people are like, oh yeah, they just became an overnight success. There's 10 years of work behind that takeoff in the overnight success arena.
Well, Chris, you're spot on about it. It's funny because no one, like, if you think about a popular band, they always say, oh, they came out of nowhere. Well, no one was talking to them when they were in Michigan when it was, 7 below outside in the snow, and they're all like 7 dudes in a van, like playing at a dive bar, like you said. And so no one talks about that. No one sees that work. And so it's like the glacier, you only see the top part of the glacier, but really underneath, or the duck that's paddling. It's that same level of it. And I like you advocating the long game, because I think a lot of people don't play that. But I also want people to know too, if they would just get off their butt and just do it and hear no 17 times a day, that stuff can happen, and it's a numbers game. And so just keep getting after it.
Okay. So kind of in closing here, anything you'd like to get out to people, how they can contact you, what kind of things you can do for them?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you enjoyed our conversation, would like to network and rub shoulders, and Chris, a special invitation for you too as well. We always do live events because we're speakers and we love to connect promoters and speakers together. So you can check out SpeakingEmpire.com/event, and that will take you to whatever event's happening. And then if you want to go further around this whole messaging stuff, I want to just give you a gift as value for listening in and investing your time with us. And so we have a book that we actually give away. All I ask is you just pay shipping and handling on it, and that you actually read the book, because once you do, it's going to open up your mind and you're going to love it. So it's SpeakingEmpire.com/free book, all one word, lowercase, free book. And that will give you access to the free book, that you can see more about Speaking Empire there and all the events and the community and all that.
All right. Well, thanks a lot for joining today, Dustin. And I think you've definitely give some insight on the speaking area, and you help me out too. So I learn every day from whoever. But
awesome.
Yes. Thanks a lot, and have a good day.